we move to the health and drug sector for our next session on healing the nation, how drug regulations are paving the way for accessible healthcare. And for this session, I now invite Shri Rajesh Bhushan, Shri A.K. Pradhan, Shri C.K. Mishra, and Shri Indu Bhushan. I would request our panel who played a crucial role in shaping India's health policies. He was also the officer on special duty in the ministry overseeing critical health initiatives. He's also served as secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development and in the Cabinet Secretariat, where he contributed significantly to fields of education, transport, and rural development. Shri A.K. Pradhan is the former Joint Drugs Controller of India with a wealth of experience in drug regulation and public health. As a senior member of the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, he was responsible for key functions like drug approvals, conducting clinical trials, setting drug standards, and ensuring the quality of imported drugs. He worked closely with the state drug control organizations under the Drugs Controller General of India. Shri C.K. Mishra is the former Union Secretary of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. In his distinguished 37 years of public service, he held state-level positions in health and energy, as well as engagements with central ministries such as textiles and defense. On the international stage, he led India's negotiations at key global forums like the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of the Parties. Dr. Indu Bhushan is the former CEO of Ayushman Bharat Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, where he also led the implementation of the National Digital Health Mission, later known as the Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission. He worked at TB, he held key roles such as Director General of both the East Asia Department and the Strategy and Policy Department. The session will be moderated by Dr. Indu Bhushan. I would request you to initiate the discussion by giving a broad view of the regulatory issues pertaining to the sector.
So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Mr. Raghav Chandra, for organizing this session and inviting us. And the title of the session was Health and Drug Regulations. And if you look at health, health is a huge subject, and regulation of health sector probably require a whole day of discussion, because it involves regulation of services, regulations of personnel, NMC, and regulation of drugs, regulation of information related to health and data. So, but we are luckily, we were told that we can narrow it down only to one part, that is drug. And even in drug, there's so many issues involved, and we've been given 30 minutes, or 35 or 40, 35 minutes. And within that, probably even the stating the problem itself will take more than 35 minutes. Because we, of course, unlike other sectors, in health, whatever happens is actually irreversible, and there is a huge amount of asymmetry of information. People at the receiving end actually know much less as compared to the providers. There is no level playing field in that. Also, in terms of the market power, there is a very imbalanced market power, and because there are people who are just price takers and not price setters, and because of that, there are several sources of market failure which require regulations. But when we come to drugs, where India actually has done really very well, we are known as pharmacy of the world. We supply more than 60% of vaccines to the whole world, and we are the primary producer of generic drugs. And we have a dual role here, where we are providing and trying to promote industry. At the same time, we have to regulate the industry so that we can maintain the quality. And in doing this, there are several trade-offs. One is between innovation and regulation. excessive regulation can hamper innovation. At the same time, we need innovations for better and more effective drugs. Same thing goes for quality and drug safety, where to draw line. We also have to ensure that the prices of drugs are not excessive so that they are affordable. At the same time, there has to be some incentive given to the industry so that they can innovate, they can put money for R&D, at the same time can be at the cutting edge. Now new technologies are coming up, blockchain, AI, and it has implications for drug industry, and how to manage that and keep at the forefront in drug industry is a issue. Capacity of the drug regulator itself is an issue, and the capacity and structure, there have been several recommendations which have been given to improve and raise the status and authority and independence of drug regulator, which has not, and the number of people that they should have in terms of regulation, that is a big problem. Another complexity is center versus state, because state have their own regulators and they have their own incentive. They want to attract industry to their states, and for that reason they don't want to be very strict with the drug industry, but not realizing that while the benefit of those drug industries go to those states, but cost of bad drugs actually is shared by the whole nation, in fact in some cases the whole globe. And recently the issue of bad quality drugs which have given us bad name has also emerged. So with that, I think I'll given all these major trade-offs and issues related to drug, I'll ask my first question to my namesake, Mr. Rajesh Bhushan, and give your perspective on how effective are India's current regulations. I've heard you speak about it during COVID time, and you said it was very safe, effective, and the quality of drugs was high, and including vaccines. Do you see room for improvement? Are there some areas where we think we can do better?
Thank you, Dr. Indu Bhushan. It's a pleasure to be here. I would like to respond to the question raised by Dr. Indu Bhushan in two parts. And the second part, although is not part of the question, but it was part of the background that he enumerated before you, relating to the authority or the ability or the potential of the regulator. But we'll come to that later. We must realize that the pharmaceutical sector in India is regulated by an act that owes its origins to the British. 1940, Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Over a period of time, it has seen large number of changes because we had to keep up with the changing times. But more than the act which provides the broad framework, what is important are 4 rules. The drug rules, which were made in 1945, the new drug and clinical trial rules, which came in extremely handy during the COVID pandemic management, they were made as recently as 2019. And large number of regulatory activity happens under this, Pradhan sir. The third important is the medical devices rule. Because in the last decade or so, India is now slowly emerging because of various kind of push that government is giving, Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, so on and so forth, as a medical device manufacturing center. Multiple centers are coming up. There are these devices parks which have been set up as a promotive activity. So Medical Devices Rule 2017. So please appreciate Act 1940 ka, but all important rules were 2017, 2019, and the cosmetics rule of 2020, because they also regulate cosmetics. Now, what is the problem? The problem is, as Dr. Indu Bhushan said, one, it is a scattered system. Scattered in the sense that certain regulation is done by the state governments, certain regulation is done by the union government, and there is an overlap. And that grey area leads to a lot of confusion. One example of that grey area is that licenses for new drugs, Dr. Pradhan, would be given only and only by the union government. But there are states who also give licenses. Half of the time, since the centralized database of the drug regulator, the federal drug regulator, does not show what is happening in the states, so no one is aware कि किसने क्या license कहाँ दे दिया, and subsequently उसमें क्या manufacture हो रहा है और क्या जिम्बाब्वे, मोजाम्बिक, नाइजीरिया या अन्य देशों को export हो रहा है. So this is a major issue, the scattered nature of the regulatory system. There is an opportunity for Government of India to address this. There is a new bill which is in advanced stages of being presented first to the Union Cabinet, which will approve it, and then to the Parliament of India. So that should be grabbed by the government to address this issue. The second most important issue is how stringently we enforce whatever regulations are there. I was talking to his colleagues last week and I was told that the total number of average samples lifted nationally, जो इनके ड्रग इंस्पेक्टर लिफ्ट करते हैं और जो स्टेट्स के ड्रग इंस्पेक्टर्स लिफ्ट करते हैं, टेकन टुगेदर, दैट एवरेज नंबर इज ओनली 1,25,000. This is happening in a country which produces more than 60,000 generic drugs, 60,000, which exports $25.3 billion worth of pharmaceutical products every year. 25 billion $US का हमारा एक्सपोर्ट है और हम सैंपल लिफ्ट करते हैं 1,25,000, वो भी अब. Earlier it was, when I was secretary, sir, it was less than 1 lakh. So this is the area of how we enforce. So ensuring that the regulatory system gets rectified and ensuring that enforcement gets rectified. And one sentence before, sir, I part with my answer on the regulator. The classical theory of a regulator is, in any sector, चाहे वो सेबी हो या insurance regulatory authority हो या pension regulatory authority हो, is arm's distance from the ministry. How can you have the drug regulator being part of the Directorate General of Health Services, which itself is a attached office of the Ministry of Health? तो आप तो subordinate के भी subordinate हो जाते हैं. How would then you act in an autonomous manner? So I would leave it there. Thank you, sir.
So you did not directly answer the question. My question was that are the current regulation effective enough to ensure safety, efficacy and quality of drugs? Maybe indirectly you said that our system is broken, it's not doing it. So my second question, my question to CK sir is that if of course you were health secretary and you to provide advice to the new health secretary, so what policy reforms would you prioritize to strengthen the system that is broken right now in next 5 years to make it more effective?
See, the system has been broken for a long time. And if you ask me honestly, it suits everyone to live with a broken system. It serves many purposes on the wrong side of the spectrum. Let's leave that aside. Admitting that it's a broken system, you know, you could go on discussing what you expect of the system. The very fact that Drugs and Cosmetics Act, where cosmetics is hardly regulated, I mean, we've not been able to change the name so far. 7 to 8 years, Rajesh, correct me if I am wrong, because I remember 2016 we started this exercise of rewriting the Drugs and Cosmetic Act. We have not yet written it. This itself should define what we want and where we want to go. Having said that, since you have asked, let's briefly see. I would have 4 or 5 ideas of what ideal thing should be. One is consistency. We've been a system which has worked on knee-jerk reactions. Every incident has prompted one OM from the government. And every such OM has created multiple confusions among both producers, consumers, and everybody else. So we have not been able to have a consistent policy which either promotes investment or promotes production, or, if I may say, ensures safety. So first and foremost is a consistency of the entire system. The second is, and Dr. A.K. Pradhan would agree with me, clarity and ease in the act itself. I challenge many people sitting here that when orders are issued, in one read, if one can make out what is written, I'll be extremely grateful. I think he is the best man in the world. With that kind of a communication, who are we communicating with? We are communicating with drug producers, we are communicating with drug consumers, and also we are promoting in some way to policymakers and others. So if your communication channels are not clear, and what we communicate hides more than what it speaks, it is a very, very difficult job. That ambiguity needs to go. And I'll again come back to my first point. Unfortunately, in this system, and it's not just about drugs, take any act, any regulation, the ambiguity, according to me, is deliberately built in by us. It is all about retaining power and authority. We need to let that go. Then there is this issue that in India, and this was a huge topic during COVID, we have yet not been able to do a global harmonization of our regulations. We have some agreement with some countries wherein we recognize what they do, etc. But why can't India, as such a big producer of drugs, have a globally harmonized act? As I mentioned, these things have been taken note of and are happening, but they have been happening for the last 7-8 years and not come to finality. We need that in place for two things. It strengthens the industry and it gets you recognition from other producers all over the world. So that is one aspect that we seriously need to look at. If you look at the Act, let us just take one aspect of it, clinical trials. We keep saying that nobody is interested in doing clinical trials in India. Let the DCGI do a clinical trial under the current rules and show it to me that is very easy to do it. There are serious issues, and we made all the efforts, but it has come to naught. So nobody wants to invest in that in India. I personally feel that the drug controller is not merely to control quality and standard of drugs. He is there to promote good quality drugs, promote manufacturing of good quality drugs. So that must come into play. And the last point, Indu, given you 35 minutes, we are not just a broken system, we are a tattered one.
Thank you, CK. So, consistency.
No, just 1 second. I'll tell you why. One ministry controls one thing, the other ministry controlling another thing. Nobody knows where devices will fall, what pharma will do tomorrow, which drug. Technically you're supposed to recommend to NPPA for whatever happens, but you never know what is going to be done. API will be handled by someone. How do you integrate all this? Pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, devices. I think there has to be one integrated whole if you really want to achieve something. Thanks, Indu.
So CK, starting with CCs, 3 C's at least: consistency, clarity, and coordination. And of course, coordination including with the international bodies. International. So now my question is that this was a very sobering picture, the two ex-health secretaries presented here, and you've been at the receiving end, you've been implementing it, Dr. Pradhan. Can you tell us that what were the biggest challenges that you faced, especially in this diverse, fragmented system, lack of capacity in enforcing these regulations? And also, there's been a spate of news about these counterfeit and substandard drugs. How have you been, and of course, they pose a huge challenge to all of us, and how have you been tackling that issue?
Thank you, sir, and thank you, sir, all my seniors, all stalwarts here. Actually, you know that drug regulatory system in India are full of strength and challenges and gaps. So I would like to highlight some of the things, because Indian drug regulatory systems have many strengths. One of the strength is that, as sir have already mentioned, that broken system, but the regulatory framework or legislative framework, as sir has already mentioned, there are 4 rules, Drugs and Cosmetics Act, comprehensive legislative frameworks are there. But the system is that licensing by state licensing authority primarily for drugs. However, the central licensing authorities are responsible for mainly approval of new drugs, new FDCs, etc. Therefore, there is a broken system, as sirs have mentioned. However, there are other various measures have been taken. Recent concerns regarding that counterfeit or spurious, actually there is no word of counterfeit in our act. In our act, it is spurious drug. Internationally, they talk about counterfeit. We call it legally as a spurious. Spurious drugs and not of standard qualities. Both the things are to be looked differently and handled differently. How? Not of standard quality drugs means the drugs are being manufactured by the licensed manufacturer under the licensed facilities. However, the drug is not conforming to certain test parameters. There may be assay. The active ingredients should have been 90%. There have been some less amount, less content of active ingredient may be less. Then it is not of standard quality. But spurious drug, we generally mean that if a product is manufactured by somebody who is not known, whose name is not disclosed, but that product is marketed and under the name of a leading brand of an established company. Like recently, sir, that drug alerts that has been mentioned, 4 or 5 products, the company is claiming that we have not manufactured this product, but these are in the market. And that has been manufactured by somebody, unscrupulous persons. And because it is in the supply chain, drug inspector has taken those samples and it has been tested in our laboratory, it has been found spurious. I don't know whether it is spurious or not. Manufacturers are claiming that it has not been manufactured by us. If really it has not been manufactured by that company, whose actually brand is there, then the matter is very serious. That has to be differently handled. For not of standard quality, yes, we have measures. We can take stringent measures, stringent system to strengthen the drug licensing system. Means before actually grant license to manufacture a particular drug, there has to be a procedures. There has to be development of the product. What is happening today, as per our earlier good manufacturing practices, most of the small companies or medium or small or micro MSME, many of those companies, they don't design and plan and develop and test and release the product. What they do? They simply procure the ingredients and mix up this and start manufacturing and may be testing or may not be testing and releasing the product. If you want to manufacture a product of good standard qualities, then you have to plan, you have to design, you have to test, you have to develop the product, then you have to expose this product for stability testing for 6 months, 1 year, then you manufacture and test and release. So there is a lack of system. In order to address this particular problem, what we have done recently, that good manufacturing practices guidelines under Schedule M has been implemented, because these draft rules are, draft rule was published in 2018 to make the good manufacturing practice guidelines at par with the global standard as per WHO GMP guidelines. But that was not implemented so far. It has taken 5 years because of, various contentious issue among the stakeholders. Because once you make the guidelines stringent, one part of the industry will be happy because they are already having that facility at par. And the small companies, they don't have that facility. They fear that they have to shut down their business once we upgrade the requirements and guidelines. That's why it has taken such a lot of time. But finally, on 28th December 2023, Government of India has published the final rules and it has been implemented. And it is already implemented for the big companies, those companies which are having turnover of more than 250 crores annual turnover. But for small companies, government has given 1 year, and that will be on 28th December 2024. But now there are again representation that small companies are very vigorously requesting government that you give us two years extension, because we can't implement these high standards, then we need so much resource and these things. So these new guidelines, I would say, it has a very significant steps. It has pharmaceutical quality system. There it is clearly mentioned that you have to manufacture the product through quality by design. Quality by design means you just cannot procure the ingredients, mix up and do something and put into tablet machine and manufacture and selling the product. You have to plan, you have to design, you have to develop, you have to test, then only you can release the product. If that good manufacturing practices, if it is implemented properly in India, yes, there are challenges, like for small companies who are
we have 10 minutes remaining, so I'll just ask one round of question. Maybe you can focus, give only 2 minutes. So I'll start with you, CK, and Rajesh was saying that we are exporting $25 billion worth of drugs and pharmaceuticals, and we are proud of it. We call ourselves Pharmacy of the World. And one of the roles of regulator is that we ensure good quality. At the same time, also we promote innovations. But my sense from what you said is we are doing neither. Neither are we promoting, ensuring good quality drugs or promoting innovation. So how can we do that, CK? And what is your view in terms of how we can spur this further?
See, let me first begin from where Mr. Pradhan ended. Our regulations are not at fault. They are robust, and in many challenging times they have actually withstood the test. The problem is, with evolving time, we've not been able to keep pace with what is happening around us. That is the basic issue. Having said that, to your issue of innovation, it's a matter of design fault. If you look at our regulatory system, they are designed for production and not for innovation. That's the way it's been written and shaped. So it is all about, controlling. It's about ensuring standards. It's about ensuring quality. And it's in some ways promoting more and more production, but not innovation, because innovation would require the drug controller to go that extra mile to handhold industry to actually be able to innovate.
Okay.
Innovation will require investments, and that there has to be a policy to back those investments and save them. I'll stop here. So it's about
you.
production,
Thank you,
not
CK.
innovation.
Thank you, CK, for being so candid on this issue. My next question is to Rajesh, आपके लिए कि like we are also proud of other fact that we have done a really well on generic drugs. We produce, but again, this is something where the quality has been an issue. So even for CGHS, when we are assigned given generic drugs, we don't like it, right? We want to have non-generic ones. So how can we ensure that the affordability which comes from generic drugs, we maintain that, at the same time we ensure that quality is there? So how can our system address that issue of quality and affordability?
I would like to say at the outset that let us not go into this domain of personal preferences. You see, I may not like a generic drug. That does not mean that the generic drug is qualitatively of inferior quality. This happens. It happens with most of us when we go to doctors, and we would want them to prescribe us proprietary drugs. But that's a discussion for another day. Let us focus on quality. And to appreciate this problem, I would agree with what Dr. C.K. Mishra has said, that in India, if you look at the pharma manufacturers, you can broadly categorize them into three categories. First category are the Indian subsidiaries or Indian arms of foreign multinationals manufacturing in India. Their quality is obviously not an issue because they produce for domestic consumption as well as for export. Then they are what I would like to call Indian multinationals. These are purely 100% Indian companies, Indian promoters. They have manufacturing facility in India and in foreign countries also. They are also in export business in a big way. For them also quality is not an issue because Schedule M they have to perforce WHO GMP they have to comply with, otherwise they cannot export. That leaves the large MSME sector. So you see, at a different level we say कि अगर हिंदुस्तान को देखो तो by volume we are number 3 in the drugs market globally, और value से देखो तो we are number 13 in the global market. These figures have changed? No, they have not changed. So the same applies to MSME. अगर आप उसको volume से देख रहे हैं, they are a significant player. लेकिन अगर आप value से देख रहे हैं, they are an insignificant player. But they have this potential to damage your national reputation globally by saying कि हमने जो कफ सिरप भेजा उसमें तरह तरह के ingredients were questionable. So therefore this global reputation in terms of quality is not based on your Zydus Cadillas or Sun Pharmas or Biocons of India. They are based on some nondescript Rajesh, Bhushan and company operating out of eastern UP or interior Haryana or some part of Rajasthan. So therefore what Dr. Pradhan was saying, this Schedule M which finally saw the light of the day, WHO GMP, in December 2023 becomes important. लेकिन उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये है कि आपकी टाइमलाइन कहती है कि द रेगुलेटर विल इंश्योर कि वो 1 जनवरी 2025 से सब पे लागू हो जाएगा. Then as regulator you can shut shop of a large number of MSMEs. They are also an important player in the economy. What are you doing, not as the regulator but as health ministry and as sir said, as Department of Pharmaceutical, to strengthen the MSME to comply with this Schedule M? उसको अपना शॉप फ्लोर चेंज करना होगा, उसको अपनी मशीनें चेंज करनी होंगी, उसको एक साइंटिस्ट रखने होंगे या मल्टीपल साइंटिस्ट रखने होंगे. So what are you doing to help them? So apparently I was told that there is some scheme of Department of Pharma which has a allocation of 500 crores this financial year, which says that MSMEs can come to us and take this money. So this has to be, as sir said, not a disjointed effort. It has to be a coordinated effort of multiple ministries तभी ये ग्लोबल स्टैंडर्ड्स की क्वालिटी इंश्योर हो पाएगी.
Thank you, Rajesh. Very incisive. So my last question is to you, and I'm changing the tag here. That how does a regulator here involve private sector in terms of approvals, in terms of oversight, in terms of the regulation itself? What kind of involvement is there for private sector?
Sir, actually, involvement of private sector is important so far as policy making or rule, act, amendments, provisions, guidelines making, etc. But involvement of private sectors in actual at the level of implementation for drug approval or for monitoring of quality through inspection audits, these are contentious issues, because that involves conflict of interest. There have been, because we have a system of subject experts committees who actually deliberate the safety efficacy aspects of any new drugs before its approval in India. There have been a number of discussion whether we can include private experts from private medical college into it. So there are divergent views. Yes, private experts may be much more efficient in terms of giving evaluation of safety efficacy from private practice perspective, but at the same time there may be a lot of conflict of interest involved. Therefore, so far all experts are from government medical college and government hospital. So therefore I think that involvement of private sector in policy making, in framing up of guidelines or regulatory documents which are general in nature for improving the public trust and confidentiality and confidence of the regulators is very important, and that is required. Yes.
So thank you very much, and I know that you have questions, but you can ask them offline. These guys are going to be here for some time, and so and thank you, and maybe join me in thanking the three panelists who've given such a good insights.
We thank our panelists for this extremely illuminating session.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.